In a towering penthouse that overlooked the glittering city lights, Marcus Kane lived a life most people could only dream of. The view from his floor-to-ceiling windows was breathtaking, but Marcus rarely took the time to appreciate it. His days were filled with meetings, phone calls, and endless paperwork, all part of running one of the largest companies in the world. Yet despite his wealth and success, there was an emptiness inside him, a void no amount of money or power could fill. Years ago, Marcus had been married to Sarah, the love of his life. Together, they had a daughter named Emily, who brought joy and laughter into their home. But tragedy struck when a car accident claimed both their lives on a rainy night. Since then, Marcus had thrown himself into work, burying his pain under piles of business deals and acquisitions. He stopped attending social events, avoided interviews, and even turned down invitations from old friends. Over time, he became known as the Billionaire Recluse, a man who seemed untouchable yet deeply alone. One quiet evening, after dismissing his assistant for the day, Marcus found himself sitting at his desk, staring blankly at a stack of envelopes. Fan mail wasn't unusual for someone like him, but he rarely paid attention to it. Most letters were either requests for donations or attempts to get noticed by riding on his fame. Still, something about this particular pile caught his eye. Maybe it was boredom, or maybe it was curiosity, but he decided to open one. The first few letters were predictable. Praise for his achievements, pleas for financial help, and proposals for partnerships. But then, he came across a plain white envelope with messy handwriting. It stood out because it lacked any fancy logos or formalities. Intrigued, Marcus opened it carefully, revealing a handwritten note inside. As he began reading, his usual stoic expression softened. The letter was from two young twin girls named Lily and Sophie. They wrote about how much they admired him and how they believed he was someone special, not just because of his money, but because of his story. Born into poverty, Marcus had worked hard to build his empire, and the twins saw him as proof that anything was possible if you tried hard enough. But what truly caught his attention was their request. Their mother had recently passed away, leaving them heartbroken and struggling to cope. They missed her terribly and wanted to feel close to her again. So, they asked Marcus, a man they thought might have some connection to heaven, to write a message to their mom. "We know she's watching over us," they wrote, "but we don't think she hears us very well. Can you please tell her we're doing our best? We promise we're being good." Tucked inside the envelope was a photograph of the twins. In the picture, they stood side by side outside what looked like an old trailer home. Their clothes were worn, and their smiles were faint, but their eyes shone with hope and determination. Something about their faces stirred emotions in Marcus that he hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long while, he couldn't look away. The photograph of Lily and Sophie lingered in Marcus's mind long after he had set it down on his desk. He couldn't shake the image of their small, hopeful faces or the faint sadness that seemed to hide behind their smiles. The trailer in the background told a story of its own: peeling paint, rusted edges, and a general air of neglect. It was clear the twins didn't have much, but what struck Marcus most was how they still managed to radiate warmth despite their circumstances. As he read their letter again, he noticed little details he had missed the first time. They mentioned living with their grandmother, who worked tirelessly to provide for them. "She gets tired sometimes," they wrote, "but she always tells us we're her reason to keep going." They also talked about missing their mother's hugs, her cooking, and even the way she used to sing them lullabies before bed. Every sentence was filled with love and longing, painting a picture of a family doing their best to hold on in the face of loss and hardship. Marcus felt a pang of familiarity as he read those words. He remembered the early days after Sarah and Emily's death, the overwhelming grief, the sleepless nights, and the constant ache of missing them. He had buried himself in work to avoid confronting those feelings, but now, reading this letter from two young girls who were going through something so similar, he couldn't help but feel a connection. Their pain was raw and real, and it reminded him of his own. Curiosity began to gnaw at him. Who were these girls? Where did they live? And why did their request feel so personal, as if it had been written specifically for him? Determined to learn more, Marcus decided to dig deeper. Using resources only a billionaire could access, he hired a private investigator to track down the address listed on the envelope. What he discovered shocked him even further. Lily and Sophie lived in a small, struggling town several hours away from the city. Their grandmother, Mrs. Thompson, juggled multiple jobs, cleaning houses during the day and working late-night shifts at a diner to make ends meet. The family relied heavily on community support, often receiving donated clothes and groceries just to get by. Despite their challenges, neighbors described the twins as bright, kind-hearted, and full of life. They were known for helping others whenever they could, whether it was sharing their lunch with a classmate or volunteering at the local church. Marcus found himself scrolling through photos of the twins online, pictures taken at school events, community gatherings, and charity drives. In every photo, they stood close together, holding hands or leaning into each other. There was an unspoken bond between them, a strength that came from facing life's difficulties side by side. Even though they didn't have much materially, they seemed rich in spirit and resilience. But what haunted Marcus the most was the stark contrast between their lives and his own. Here he was, sitting in a luxurious penthouse surrounded by wealth, while these two young girls barely had enough to survive. Yet they carried themselves with grace and gratitude, qualities he hadn't seen in himself for years. The more he learned about them, the more he realized how much they reminded him of Sarah. Their kindness, their determination, their ability to find light in the darkest moments. It was all so familiar. By the time Marcus closed his laptop, his heart was heavy with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he felt admiration for the twins and their grandmother, who continued to fight against all odds. On the other hand, he felt ashamed of his own detachment from the world. For years, he had shut people out, convinced that no one could understand his pain. But now, looking at Lily and Sophie, he wondered if maybe he wasn't as alone as he thought. That night, Marcus sat by his window, staring out at the city lights. The photograph of the twins lay on the table beside him, their faces etched into his memory. He knew he couldn't ignore them, not after seeing how much they needed someone to believe in them. But what could he do? How could he possibly step into their lives without disrupting everything they had worked so hard to build? For the first time in years, Marcus Kane felt uncertain and strangely alive. Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Lily and Sophie. Their letter, their photograph, and the glimpse into their lives had stirred something deep within him, something he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just pity or sympathy. It was a mix of admiration, curiosity, and an unexpected sense of responsibility. These girls were fighting to stay strong despite losing their mother, just as he had once tried to do after losing Sarah and Emily. He couldn't ignore the parallels between their struggles and his own. At first, Marcus considered sending them money anonymously. After all, it would be the easiest solution, writing a check, mailing it off, and moving on with his life. But the more he thought about it, the less satisfying that option seemed. Money might ease some of their burdens temporarily, but it wouldn't heal the wounds they carried inside. Besides, there was something about their sincerity, their raw honesty, that made him want to do more than just throw cash at the problem. For the first time in years, Marcus wanted to connect with real people, not transactions. After much deliberation, he decided to visit them, not as Marcus Kane, billionaire, but as someone humble and unassuming. He didn't want to intimidate them or draw unnecessary attention to himself. So early one morning, he dressed in simple clothes, climbed into an ordinary sedan, a stark contrast to his usual chauffeur-driven luxury car, and set off for the small town where the twins lived. The drive gave him plenty of time to think. As he passed through quiet countryside roads lined with trees and fields, Marcus found himself reflecting on his own childhood. Growing up poor, he had often dreamed of escaping the hardships that surrounded him. Now, decades later, he wondered if Lily and Sophie harbored similar dreams. Did they lie awake at night imagining a better future? Or were they too weighed down by grief and survival to dream at all? When he finally arrived in their town, Marcus was struck by how different it felt from the bustling city he called home. The streets were narrow, the houses modest, and the pace of life slow. People greeted each other warmly as they walked by, and children played freely in the park without a care in the world. It was a stark reminder of how disconnected he had become from the simpler joys of life. Using the address provided in the letter, Marcus located the trailer where the twins lived. His heart sank when he saw it up close. The reality was even harsher than the photograph suggested. The roof sagged slightly, the front steps creaked underfoot, and the garden was overgrown with weeds. Yet there was a certain charm to it too. Handmade wind chimes hung from the porch, creating soft melodies in the breeze, and colorful drawings taped to the windows hinted at the lively spirits inside. Taking a deep breath, Marcus knocked on the door. Moments later, it opened, revealing two pairs of wide, curious eyes staring back at him. Lily and Sophie stood there, their expressions shifting from surprise to confusion. At first, they didn't recognize him, likely because he looked nothing like the polished businessman they'd seen in magazines. But when he introduced himself, their jaws dropped in disbelief. "Are you really Marcus Kane?" Sophie asked, her voice trembling with awe. "Yes, I am," Marcus replied with a gentle smile. "And you must be Lily and Sophie." Before they could respond, their grandmother appeared behind them, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She eyed Marcus cautiously, clearly unsure what to make of his sudden appearance. Sensing her hesitation, Marcus quickly explained that he had received their letter and wanted to meet them in person. To his relief, she welcomed him inside, though her polite demeanor betrayed a hint of wariness. The interior of the trailer was modest but welcoming. A threadbare couch sat against one wall, adorned with mismatched cushions. Family photos covered another wall, capturing moments of laughter and love. Despite the obvious signs of poverty, the space radiated warmth, a testament to the strength and resilience of those who called it home. As Marcus settled into a chair, he handed the twins a carefully written note addressed to their mother in heaven. Their faces lit up with gratitude as they read it, and for the first time since arriving, Marcus felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this visit wasn't just about helping them. It was also about healing himself. The moment Marcus handed the note to Lily and Sophie, their eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and disbelief. They clutched it tightly, as if it were the most precious thing they'd ever received. "Thank you," Lily whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "We didn't think anyone would really listen." Sophie nodded eagerly, adding, "Now Mommy will know we're okay." Mrs. Thompson, their grandmother, watched the scene unfold with a mixture of gratitude and caution. She had raised her guard when Marcus first arrived, unsure of his intentions, but seeing how genuinely he interacted with the twins began to soften her skepticism. Still, she couldn't help but wonder why someone like him, a man who could buy anything or go anywhere, would take time out of his life to visit them. Marcus noticed her lingering doubt and decided to address it directly. "I know this might seem strange," he said gently, turning to Mrs. Thompson, "but their letter touched me deeply. I lost my wife and daughter years ago, and reading what Lily and Sophie wrote made me feel like I wasn't alone in my grief anymore. I wanted to meet them, to let them know they matter." His words seemed to resonate with her. Tears welled up in her eyes as she nodded slowly. "You have no idea how much that means to us," she said softly. "These girls are my whole world, but sometimes it feels like the world doesn't care about people like us." That statement hit Marcus hard. He glanced around the small trailer again, taking in every detail: the worn furniture, the faded curtains, and the faint smell of lavender coming from a candle on the table. Despite the obvious struggles, there was an undeniable sense of love and warmth here. It reminded him of his own childhood home, where money had been tight but affection abundant. To break the tension, Marcus asked the twins to tell him more about their mother. Their faces lit up instantly as they began sharing stories. Mom used to make pancakes shaped like hearts every Sunday, Sophie said with a grin. Even though they never turned out perfect, we always ate them all. And she sang to us before bed, Lily added, her voice growing softer. Her voice was so pretty. Sometimes I still hear it in my dreams. As they spoke, Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. The way they described their mother sounded eerily familiar. It was almost as if they were talking about Sarah, her kindness, her laughter, even the little quirks they mentioned. It all matched the memories he had buried deep inside. The resemblance between these girls and his late wife was uncanny, but he pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the present moment. Determined to leave a lasting impression, Marcus spent the next hour chatting with the family, learning more about their lives and sharing bits of his own story. He told them about growing up poor and how losing his family had changed him forever. Though he didn't reveal too many personal details, his vulnerability created a bond that transcended wealth or status. Before leaving, Marcus promised to stay in touch. "I'll come back soon," he said, kneeling down to look the twins in the eye. "And until then, remember, you're stronger than you think. Your mom is proud of you, wherever she is." Lily and Sophie hugged him tightly, their tiny arms wrapping around his neck. For the first time in years, Marcus felt a genuine connection, one that filled the emptiness he had carried for so long. As he walked back to his car, he glanced at the photograph of the twins he had brought with him. Something about it still tugged at his heart, but he couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. Little did he know, that photograph held a secret far greater than he could have imagined, a revelation that would change not only his life, but theirs as well. That night, back in the quiet solitude of his penthouse, Marcus found himself staring at the photograph of Lily and Sophie again. It was worn and slightly faded, but the girls' smiles shone through with a brightness that seemed almost otherworldly. There was something about their faces, something he couldn't quite place, that kept drawing him in. At first, he thought it was just their resemblance to Sarah, his late wife. But as he studied the picture more closely, an unsettling realization began to take shape. Their eyes. It wasn't just the color or shape, it was the way they sparkled with kindness and determination, the same way Sarah's had. And then there were the dimples on their cheeks when they smiled, identical to the ones Emily used to have. The similarities were uncanny, but Marcus dismissed them as coincidence. After all, grief could play tricks on the mind, making you see connections where none existed. But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. So early the next morning, Marcus pulled out old photo albums from the storage room, a task he hadn't dared to do in years. Dust covered the leather-bound books, and opening them felt like stepping into a time capsule. Page after page revealed snapshots of happier days. Sarah laughing at the beach, Emily blowing out candles on her birthday cake, and countless moments frozen in time. As he flipped through the pages, his hands trembled slightly, overcome by memories he had locked away for so long. And then he saw it, a picture of Sarah during her college years, standing beside two tiny cribs. In the background, a nurse held two newborn babies swaddled in soft blankets. Marcus remembered that day vividly now, the day Sarah told him she was pregnant. She had been terrified, unsure if she was ready to be a mother at such a young age. He had supported her decision to give the twins up for adoption, believing it was the best choice for everyone involved. Back then, they'd promised each other never to speak of it again, burying the secret deep within their hearts. His breath caught in his throat as he compared the old photograph to the one Lily and Sophie had sent him. The resemblance was undeniable. These weren't just random girls who reminded him of his wife. They were her daughters, his grandchildren. The revelation hit him like a tidal wave, leaving him dizzy and disoriented. For hours, he sat motionless, trying to process what this meant. How could fate bring him face to face with the very family he thought he'd lost forever? What were the chances that these girls would write to him, of all people, asking for help? It felt like the universe had conspired to reunite them. Yet the weight of the truth pressed heavily on his chest. Marcus knew he couldn't keep this information to himself, not after seeing how much the twins loved and missed their mother. They deserved to know where they came from, even if it meant reopening old wounds. But how could he tell them without overwhelming them? How could he explain that the man they called Uncle Marcus was actually their grandfather? Over the next few days, Marcus wrestled with his conscience. He visited the twins again, spending more time with them and their grandmother. Each interaction deepened his bond with the girls, making the prospect of revealing the truth both thrilling and terrifying. They adored him, trusting him completely, and he didn't want to betray that trust. Finally, he decided to consult Mrs. Thompson. Sitting her down one afternoon, he shared everything: the adoption, the photographs, and his growing suspicion. To his relief, she listened patiently, her expression softening as the pieces fell into place. "I always wondered why those babies looked so familiar," she admitted quietly. Sarah looked just like them. With her blessing, Marcus prepared to tell Lily and Sophie the truth. It wouldn't be easy, but he knew it was the right thing to do. As he drove back to the city that evening, his mind raced with possibilities. This discovery wasn't just about connecting the dots of the past. It was about building a future together, one filled with love, understanding, and healing. For the first time in years, Marcus felt alive. The days leading up to Marcus's decision to reveal the truth were some of the longest of his life. Every time he thought about sitting down with Lily and Sophie, his stomach churned with nerves. How would they react? Would they feel betrayed that he had kept this secret from them? Or would they embrace the news as a way to feel closer to the mother they missed so dearly? The uncertainty weighed heavily on him, but he knew there was no turning back now. To ease into things, Marcus continued visiting the twins regularly, bringing small gifts and spending quality time with them. He taught them how to bake cookies, a skill Sarah had once loved, and shared stories about her college days, carefully avoiding any mention of the adoption. The girls soaked up every detail, their eyes lighting up whenever he spoke about their mom. "She sounds amazing," Sophie said one afternoon as they sat together in the cozy kitchen. "I wish I could have known her better." "You did know her," Marcus replied softly, his voice thick with emotion. "She lives on in you too. Everything she was. Her kindness, her strength, her love. It's all right here." He gestured to their hearts, and for a moment, the room fell silent. As the bond between them grew stronger, Marcus began making subtle changes to improve their lives. At first, it started with small gestures: fixing the leaky roof of their trailer, replacing the creaky front steps, and buying new school supplies. Then he went further, arranging for their grandmother's medical bills to be paid off anonymously, and setting up a fund to cover their education. Mrs. Thompson noticed these improvements but never questioned where the help was coming from. She simply thanked Marcus for being there, unaware of just how deeply connected he truly was. Despite his efforts to stay behind the scenes, the twins started calling him Uncle Marcus. It wasn't planned or forced. It just happened naturally, as if their hearts instinctively recognized him as family. Hearing those words warmed something inside Marcus that he hadn't felt in years. For the first time since losing Sarah and Emily, he felt a sense of belonging again. But the secret still loomed over him like a storm cloud. One evening, after tucking the girls into bed during one of his visits, Marcus found himself sitting alone with Mrs. Thompson in the living room. She sipped her tea quietly, watching him with knowing eyes. "You care about them a lot, don't you?" she asked gently. Marcus nodded, his gaze fixed on the floor. "More than I can put into words," he admitted. "They remind me so much of Sarah and Emily." Mrs. Thompson placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Whatever it is you're holding back, Marcus, I think it's time you let it go. Those girls have been through enough pain. If there's something that can bring them peace, even a little bit, then they deserve to know." Her words gave him the final push he needed. The next weekend, Marcus returned to the trailer, this time carrying an old photo album tucked under his arm. When the twins greeted him at the door, their faces lit up as usual, completely unaware of what awaited them. "We have something important to talk about today," he said, his tone serious yet gentle. Curious but trusting, Lily and Sophie followed him to the couch, where he opened the album to the page with the picture of Sarah and the twin cribs. "Do you remember asking me to write a letter to your mom in heaven?" he began, his voice trembling slightly. They nodded eagerly, leaning closer. "Well, I need to tell you something about her, and about yourselves." For the next hour, Marcus poured his heart out, sharing the story of Sarah's pregnancy, the difficult decision to give the twins up for adoption, and the pain of losing her too soon. He showed them the photographs, pointing out the striking resemblance between their mother and themselves. Tears streamed down his face as he explained that he wasn't just Uncle Marcus. He was their grandfather. Lily and Sophie stared at him in stunned silence, their young minds struggling to process the enormity of what he had just revealed. Finally, Sophie broke the quiet, her voice barely above a whisper. "Does this mean we're part of your family?" Marcus nodded, pulling them into a tight hug. "Yes," he choked out, tears streaming down his cheeks. "You've always been part of my family. I just didn't know it until now." In that moment, the weight of years of grief and secrecy lifted from Marcus's shoulders. For the first time in decades, he felt whole again. And though the road ahead would be filled with questions and adjustments, one thing was certain. They were no longer alone. Together, they had begun a new chapter, one rooted in love, forgiveness, and hope. The revelation that Marcus was their grandfather sent waves of emotion crashing over Lily and Sophie. At first, they were silent, their wide eyes reflecting a mix of shock, confusion, and wonder. Then, slowly, the reality began to sink in. "So, you're our mommy's daddy?" Sophie asked hesitantly, her voice trembling as she tried to piece together this new truth. Marcus nodded, his own tears streaming freely now. "Yes," he replied softly. "And your mommy was my daughter. I didn't know about you two until recently, but now that I do, I want to be here for you, for both of you." Lily reached out tentatively, placing her small hand on his arm. "Does this mean we're not alone anymore?" she whispered, her lower lip quivering. "You're not alone," Marcus assured her, pulling them both into a tight embrace. "You have me, your grandmother, and each other. We're a family, no matter what." For a long moment, the three of them sat there, holding onto one another as if afraid to let go. It was overwhelming, this sudden shift in their lives. But it was also beautiful. For the twins, who had spent so many nights missing their mother and longing for connection, having Marcus step into their world felt like finding a missing puzzle piece. And for Marcus, discovering these girls felt like reclaiming a part of himself he thought he'd lost forever. Over the next few days, Marcus stayed close to help them process everything. He answered their endless questions about Sarah, sharing memories he hadn't spoken of in years. They laughed together at stories of her clumsiness. She once burned pancakes so badly we had to order pizza, and cried together when recalling her kindness and strength. Each story brought them closer, weaving a tapestry of love that bridged the gap between past and present. Mrs. Thompson, too, played a vital role during this time. She reassured the twins that nothing would change between them, that Marcus being part of their lives didn't diminish the bond they already shared. "Your mom chose me to take care of you," she told them one evening, "and I'll always be here for you. But now, you have even more people who love you. That's a good thing." As the initial shock wore off, Lily and Sophie started opening up about how much they missed their mother. They talked about the little things, the way she used to braid their hair, the songs she sang before bedtime, and the way she made everything feel safe. Marcus listened intently, his heart breaking and healing all at once. He realized that while he could never replace Sarah, he could honor her memory by being the best grandfather he could be. To celebrate their newfound connection, Marcus planned a special outing, a trip to a nearby park where Sarah used to take Emily when she was young. The twins ran ahead, chasing butterflies, and laughing as sunlight danced through the trees. Watching them play, Marcus felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. These girls were a living legacy of the woman he loved most, and seeing their joy reminded him that life, even in its hardest moments, was worth cherishing. That evening, as they drove back to the trailer, Lily turned to Marcus with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think Mommy is happy right now?" she asked quietly. "Do you think she knows we found you?" Marcus smiled, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I think she's very happy," he said. "And I think she's watching over us, making sure we stick together." Sophie grinned, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Good," she said simply. "Because I don't want to lose anyone else." Neither did Marcus. From that day forward, he vowed to treasure every moment with Lily and Sophie, building a future filled with laughter, love, and countless new memories. Though the scars of the past would always remain, they now had something powerful to heal them: family. In the weeks that followed, Marcus's life transformed in ways he never imagined. The penthouse that once felt cold and empty now seemed less daunting as photos of Lily and Sophie began to occupy its shelves. He framed the picture they had sent him along with new ones taken during their outings, images of them laughing at the park, baking cookies in his kitchen, and sitting together on the couch flipping through old albums. Slowly but surely, warmth crept back into his world, filling spaces he thought were lost forever. For Lily and Sophie, the changes were equally profound. With Marcus fully embracing his role as their grandfather, they finally had someone who could tell them stories about their mother, not just as a memory, but as a real person who lived, loved, and laughed. They learned her favorite color, blue, her quirks. She always hummed while cooking, and even her dreams for them. "She wanted you to be brave," Marcus told them. Knowing these details made Sarah feel closer than ever before, like she was still guiding them from afar. Marcus didn't stop there. Determined to give the twins opportunities they deserved, he established a trust fund in their names to secure their future. Education, healthcare, extracurricular activities. It was all covered without overshadowing the values Mrs. Thompson had instilled in them. Hard work and kindness will always matter more than money, Marcus reminded them often, ensuring they understood the importance of staying grounded despite their newfound privileges. Their grandmother watched it all unfold with gratitude and pride. She saw how much joy Marcus brought into their lives and how much love he poured into being present for them. Whether it was attending school events, cheering them on at dance recitals, or simply sitting with them during quiet moments, Marcus became an unwavering constant in their journey. And though Mrs. Thompson continued to play her vital role, she appreciated having someone to share the weight of raising two spirited young girls. As time went on, Marcus found himself rediscovering parts of himself he thought were gone. Laughter returned to his days, replacing the silence that had lingered for so long. His grief over losing Sarah and Emily softened, not because he forgot them, but because he realized their legacy lived on through Lily and Sophie. Every milestone they reached, their first report card, their birthdays, even arguments resolved with hugs, felt like a step toward healing. One evening, as they sat together under the stars outside the trailer, Sophie turned to Marcus with a thoughtful look. "Do you think Mom would have liked you?" she asked innocently. Marcus chuckled softly, brushing away a tear. "I hope so," he replied. "But I know one thing for sure. She'd be so proud of you too. You're smart, kind, and full of light, just like her." Lily leaned her head against his shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for finding us, Grandpa." The words hit Marcus like a wave, leaving him speechless for a moment. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine hearing those words or feeling the depth of meaning behind them. For years, he had wandered through life carrying only sorrow, believing happiness was out of reach. But now, surrounded by laughter and love, he understood that life had given him a second chance, a chance to rebuild what he thought was broken. From that day forward, Marcus, Lily, and Sophie built a bond stronger than anything fate had tried to take from them. They celebrated holidays together, created traditions of their own, and supported each other through every challenge. Though the pain of loss would always remain, it no longer defined them. Instead, it served as a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the power of family to heal even the deepest wounds. And so, what began as a heartfelt letter from two poor twin girls asking a billionaire to write to their mom in heaven turned into something far greater, a story of connection, redemption, and unconditional love. It proved that sometimes, when life feels darkest, the smallest acts of kindness can lead to the brightest outcomes, a testament to the enduring strength of hope and the unbreakable ties of family.